They counted on you being 6 feet under by now, planned it, paid for it, sent their best to make sure of it, yet here you are, alive, standing, and watching their entire empire crumble in real time. And if you think this is just another courtroom drama, you're missing the part where their own hitman switched sides and testified against them. Sit tight, because what happened next left them speechless. They were so sure of themselves, so convinced that their power, their money, their network could erase you without a trace. They didn't just expect you gone, they celebrated early. But when the court doors opened and you walked in, fully alive and untouched, their confidence shattered. Their best weapon became your witness. Their airtight case turned to dust, and now the ones who thought they could play God are scrambling because they just learned the hard way. Divine protection is real, and they never stood a chance. They watched the clock, confident the hourglass still had grains to spare. 6 months was ample time to erase a problem, to ensure their loose ends were permanently tied. Their chosen enforcers had never failed, their hands steeped in silence and certainty. But when the order was given, the expected outcome became something entirely different. The executioner's expertise had never been in question, until now. A bullet meant to end things cleanly curved in defiance. An engine failure designed to look like fate resolved itself at the last second. Every calculated step unraveled, their surest methods reduced to chaos. Coincidence was a word spoken by those who refused to see, but this was no accident. This was a force beyond their reach, an unseen authority rendering every lethal attempt useless. Drop a comment. Divine timing never misses. If you've ever watched obstacles dissolve, betrayals expose themselves, and enemies fall without you lifting a finger. And then something impossible. The one assigned to eliminate found themselves seen, truly seen, for the first time. Not as a weapon, not as an extension of the will of others, but as a soul burdened by deeds they could never undo. There was no pleading, no bargaining, only a quiet certainty in those who should have been afraid. A silent knowing that justice was already in motion, that the hands sent to destroy had another purpose waiting. There was no revelation, no dramatic moment of epiphany, only the slow, undeniable shift of conviction. The assassin, once the unseen, shadow, now stood in the light of their own consequences. The same hands trained to end now moved to expose, unraveling the network that had thrived in secrecy. What was once a career of taking became one of revealing. The past laid bare for judgment. They had designed a perfect scheme, one that should have erased obstacles without trace, but instead they built the foundation of their own undoing. The very instrument of their will turned against them, their power dismantled from within. They had set the clock counting down to another's end, never realizing it was measuring their own. Divine timing does not ask for permission. It does not negotiate. It simply arrives when it is due. The moment they saw you standing where they swore you'd never be, the weight of their certainty cracked. Their legal fortress, built on intimidation and money, could not shield them from what had already been written. Their hired silence sat beside you, no longer their weapon, but your witness. The very hands they paid to remove obstacles now signed the affidavit sealing their fate. The room, once theirs to command, turned against them. Not a gavel had fallen, yet the sentence was already known. Divine protection does not only shield, it exposes, it reveals at the appointed hour. They planned a disappearance, a vanishing act, a problem erased. What they created instead was undeniable proof of their intent. Surveillance footage they never considered, bank transactions they assumed were buried, whispers turned to sworn, testimonies. Every attempt to remove you became another brick in the walls, closing around them. They wanted silence, yet now their names filled reports, their crimes no longer whispered but spoken with authority. The case they never thought would exist became the very one that could not be ignored. The scales had been reset, the weight of their actions made sure of it. They built their case on the assumption that you would not exist to contest it. Every loophole, every denial, every carefully crafted excuse hinged on your absence. They planned for sealed files, missing records, and statements that would never be given. What they did not prepare for was you, standing unshaken before them, and their own assassin turned witness at your side. The courtroom, once their battleground, became their reckoning. Their confidence, once unshakable, collapsed under the weight of undeniable truth. Divine protection does not just preserve, it positions, it exposes, it dismantles. With every shred of evidence, the roots of corruption stretched deeper than they dared to admit. What began as a single elimination order cracked open an entire network of deception, fraud, and power wielded in shadows. Money trails, they thought, were invisible, surfaced with undeniable clarity. Every desperate attempt to bury proof only revealed more, their own arrogance ensuring nothing remained hidden. They planned to erase a problem, yet their actions revealed names they swore would never be spoken. A simple act of silencing turned into an unrelenting flood of exposure, one they could neither predict nor control. The underworld they once commanded began to fracture. Others who had taken orders in silence now stepped forward, the weight of justice shifting beneath their feet. Assassins became witnesses, operatives turned informants, their entire foundation eroding from within. Fear that once kept them in power became their own undoing. What was once unquestioned loyalty dissolved into confessions, into signed testimonies, into a betrayal far greater than they ever anticipated. Your survival did more than disrupt their plan. It shattered the illusion of their control. Divine protection does not only shield, it turns the hands that once held power into the instruments of their own downfall. Drop a comment. Silence was never my fate. If they tried to erase you, bury the truth and destroy your name, yet now your voice carries weight, your presence demands attention, and your very existence is their undoing. They built their empire on control, on the illusion that no matter how many pieces fell, the core would remain untouchable. But when the walls cracked, the collapse was not gradual, it was absolute. There were no fallback plans, no sealed documents. Left unturned, no hidden leverage waiting to be played. Every deception, every carefully guarded secret, every name they swore would never be spoken was now laid bare. What they thought was a courtroom battle became a reckoning. No negotiation, no settlement, only the full weight of consequence crushing down without mercy. They did not lose quietly. They lost publicly, visibly, undeniably. Their fortress of influence shattered under the force of undeniable proof, their carefully spun narratives reduced to nothing but dust. Judges who once turned a blind eye could not ignore what was presented. Allies they trusted to clean up their messes found themselves under scrutiny. Their own lawyers, the ones paid to twist truth in their favor, sat paralyzed, because no argument could erase what had already been exposed. The verdict was written before it was spoken. It was not just defeat, it was obliteration. This was more than the end of a case, it was the end of their power. With their downfall came the collapse of everything built in its shadow. Those who once stood beside them now scrambled to escape the fallout, but there was nowhere left to hide. Every safety net had been severed, every escape route burned. What was once untouchable had been reduced to ruins, and the very forces they once controlled turned against them. Divine justice does not merely balance the scales. It grinds corruption into dust, leaving no trace of its former dominion. The obsidian inner order was forged for those who refuse to live in the shadows of mediocrity. This isn't your standard mastermind. It's a crucible for those who dominate their reality and demand excellence. Every week, over 450 members dive into raw, unfiltered sessions that deliver the exact blueprint for crushing your goals and claiming what's yours. Every strategic session is recorded and stored in our vault, ready for you to access whenever you need to fuel your next conquest. This isn't about motivation, it's about domination. Our private Discord rises above basic networking. It's a fortress, where apex performers trade the kind of knowledge that separates the rulers from the ruled. Here, real power players connect and share strategies that stay behind closed doors. You'll get immediate access to modern manifestation mechanics, an arsenal of proven strategies that turn vision into reality. Plus, you'll get exclusive interviews with high-level operators and video content so potent it makes the status quo tremble. This isn't just a membership, it's your ascension to power. Stop watching from the sidelines. Your seat at the table of titans awaits. The link is in the description below. They miscalculated from the very beginning. They built their strategies around power they could see, control, they could manipulate, and outcomes they could dictate. Their entire plan was based on human precision, timelines, weapons, money, influence. What they failed to consider was the force that governs beyond their reach. The authority that does not answer to their wealth or fear. They mistook your presence for vulnerability, your patience for passivity. What they never saw coming was the protection that made their every effort useless, their every attack meaningless. They underestimated the nature of divine favor. They thought physical force could break what was upheld by something greater. They assumed strategy could outmaneuver purpose, that deception could erase what was ordained to stand. Every failure should have been a warning, every attempt a lesson, but arrogance blinded them. When their plans fell apart, they scrambled for explanations, coincidence, miscalculation, betrayal. Never once did they consider that what opposed them was not luck, not human resistance, but something that could not be bought, threatened, or undone. Their downfall was written the moment they set their intentions against what was protected. They thought they were hunting a target. They did not realize they were walking into their own undoing. Every move they made only strengthened the case against them. Every scheme only exposed more of their corruption. The harder they pushed, the more their own foundation crumbled. They planned a swift and quiet elimination, but what they received was an unstoppable reckoning. Divine protection does not only shield, it redirects. It turns weapons back on those who wield them. It ensures that those who believe themselves untouchable are reminded in undeniable terms that there is no power greater than what has already decreed their defeat. They assumed control over outcomes, thinking their influence could shape the verdict before it was ever spoken. They placed faith in their legal teams, in their money, in the hidden hands that had always protected them. What they never accounted for was a force beyond their reach, one that does not move according to wealth or status, but according to truth and timing. They fought against you with earthly weapons, but what they faced was something far beyond what they understood. When the verdict came, it was not just a ruling, it was a declaration, a final, undeniable statement that they had lost far more than a case. The timing was not random. Every event, every delay, every revelation aligned with a precision they could not see coming. Their attempts to stall only bought more time for the right evidence to surface. The witnesses they thought were silenced found their voices at the exact moment they were needed. Their schemes to twist the narrative collapsed under the weight of undeniable facts, surfacing in ways that could not be ignored. It was not luck. It was not coincidence. It was the unseen hand of justice, ensuring that no deception could survive in the light of truth. The impact of your victory did not end with the verdict. They felt it in ways they could never fully admit. The same power they tried to destroy had now marked them. Their allies hesitated, their future plans crumbled before they could begin. Those who once moved freely now second-guessed their every step, uncertain whether their next action would be the one that exposes them further. It was more than legal defeat. It was spiritual displacement. They could sense the shift, even if they refused to name it. What once belonged to them no longer did. They will say it was strategy, bad luck, or betrayal. They will convince themselves that their loss was the fault of men and not the weight of something higher. But deep down, they know the truth. They fought against something greater than themselves, something they could not touch, manipulate, or erase. The very system they built to protect themselves turned against them, because their corruption could no longer be hidden. Every move they made to destroy you became another stone in the foundation of their own undoing. You did not just survive their attack, you overturned the entire game. Your victory did not just remove an obstacle, it established dominion. Where they once held power, now there is hesitation, uncertainty, and fear. The influence they relied on is fractured, their names whispered in caution rather than reverence. They will not move against you again, not because they lack the desire, but because they now understand what they are truly up against. This was never just about legal warfare. This was spiritual positioning, a shift in power that left them exposed, vulnerable, and unable to recover. The tables did not just turn, they collapsed under their own weight. They lost more than they ever expected, and even in their arrogance, they will not risk facing that force again. Your victory was not just seen, it was felt, and nothing they do will ever undo what has already been set in motion. They planned your destruction with precision, convinced that their tactics were flawless. Every move was calculated, every resource deployed, every weakness analyzed. But they were blind to what stood behind you, to the force that revealed their plans before they could even act. While they whispered in secret, divine intelligence already delivered their strategy into your hands. You walked through every trap without hesitation, not because you were lucky, but because you were warned. Every attempt to corner you collapsed before it could take shape. Every ambush fell apart before it could be sprung. The battlefield was never theirs to control. What they did not understand was that you were never moving alone. They relied on weapons, deception, and numbers, believing that power came from force. But their weapons misfired, their deception unraveled, their numbers turned against them. What they thought was a perfect kill became a perfect testimony. Their own agents transformed into witnesses against them. Assassins sent to eliminate you found themselves frozen, unable to strike. Their hands, trained to take life without hesitation, faltered when faced with something beyond human comprehension. The ones they trusted to execute their will were now exposing their secrets. They expected an ending, yet all they achieved was a revelation. Their operations, once hidden in the dark, were now exposed under the weight of undeniable proof. Their influence, once untouchable, now crumbled beneath the weight of their own failures. You were not just a survivor, you became the evidence of their downfall. And now they know that no plan against you will ever succeed. Not because you are untouchable by human hands, but because those hands are bound before they can ever reach you. They spent years believing they held control, moving without consequence, certain that no force existed beyond their reach. They operated in the shadows, dictating outcomes before the first move was even made. But now the balance has shifted, and they feel it in their bones. What was once theirs to command has slipped through their fingers, not by accident, but by undeniable design. They didn't just lose a case, they lost the illusion of power. Their strategies failed, their influence fractured, and their certainty dissolved into hesitation. Now they measure their words. Now they second-guess every move, because now they know exactly what they're up against. It was never about winning in their system. It was about dismantling their authority over you entirely. The moment the verdict was spoken, the moment the truth stood unchallenged, a line was drawn that they dare not cross again. Not because they lack the desire, but because they understand the cost. Every failed attempt, every backfired strategy, every shattered expectation has reshaped the battlefield. They once moved without fear. Now they calculate the risk. Their own arrogance brought them to this place, and now they cannot escape it. They don't just respect you, they fear what stands behind you. They watch you differently now. Conversations pause when your name is mentioned. The same voices that once spoke against you now carry a note of caution. There is no more reckless confidence, no more bold declarations of your downfall. That illusion is gone. They lost something permanent, the belief that you could be touched, controlled, or removed. Now they walk carefully. Now they whisper instead of command. Now they know that whatever force shattered their plans will not hesitate to do it again, and that knowledge will haunt them long after the battle is over. They orchestrated every detail, confident that precision and force would guarantee silence. They paid for secrecy, for shadows to consume the truth before it could ever reach the light. But what they never considered was that their own hand would deliver the final blow against them. The one they trusted to erase you became the voice that buried them instead. Their plans, crafted with ruthless efficiency, unraveled in a courtroom where their own assassin testified against them. The weight of their own choices crushed them, not because they were outmaneuvered by legal strategy, but because divine protection ensured their weapons turned inward. This was more than a case. It became a reckoning. The verdict was not just a declaration of your victory, but a permanent stain on their legacy. Their names, once spoken with authority, now carried the stench of failure. The legal world didn't just discuss the loss. They dissected the downfall, marveling at how a perfect crime collapsed under its own weight. Their own enforcer, once the hand of destruction, became the undeniable witness that sealed their fate. The courtroom, which should have been their stage for control, became the site of their humiliation. The world saw it. The world remembered. They thought they were delivering an ending. Instead, they set in motion the proof of your indestructibility. The message was clear. No matter the weapon, no matter the strategy, divine protection overrides every plan. They learned the hard way, that nothing forged against you could prosper, not even the hands they once trusted to remove obstacles. The tables did not just turn, they shattered, and now those who once moved freely in darkness hesitate before speaking your name, knowing that what they lost can never be regained. You are proof that no force, no scheme, no shadowed plan can overcome what is divinely protected. Every attempt against you became a step toward their unraveling, and every challenge they thought would destroy you became another testament to your resilience. They underestimated you because they did not understand what moves with you, unstoppable, unseen, undeniable. What they intended to silence became louder, stronger, and undeniable in the end. You turned their efforts into lessons, their weapons into evidence, their intentions into fuel for your rise. They will remember your name not because you fought, but because you thrived where they swore you would fall. You became the embodiment of what they fear most, the one they cannot break, the one they cannot erase, the one who walks with favor. They will never comprehend. Their power dissolved because it was never truly theirs to wield. You stood unshaken, not because the opposition was weak, but because the strength within you is greater than anything they could muster. Your story does not end here. Your survival, your victory, your truth, it carries weight beyond your own life. Share it, speak it. There are others who need to know that the forces working against them can crumble just as yours did. Let your testimony become their spark. Let your rise inspire those still facing what you have already overcome. Your story is more than survival. It is a legacy waiting to take root in others. Let them hear it. Let them see it. Let them know what is possible when you walk in your purpose.